Well, welcome everyone. The first thing I'm going to have you do is with the person to your right, please turn to that person and share your responses to the following. Left, you don't have anyone on the right. Go to the left. Go to your left then. Yeah, because there are people on the end. You all go to your right. You go to your left. Okay, the first thing that you will be doing is sharing with the person next to you, or maybe even a couple of people who are on either side of you. When you first saw me come into the space, you would have noticed me in and out several times while you were eating. What came to your mind when you saw me? What did you notice about me? Just say it to that person. Have a conversation really quickly, please.
Are you referring to you or to
Me, to me, this person here. When I came into the room earlier, I was in and out several times. What did you think of me? Who did you think I was? What came to your mind when you saw me? Or maybe you didn't even notice me at all. Say that. So I have been with Newport Strategies doing work for over about 20-something years. I've been doing this kind of work for about 35 years. I have to keep counting each year. And my undergrad was at the University of Virginia, UVA, which is considered the Southern Harvard by UVA. Yes, we are. Where I have a double major in sociology and rhetoric and communication studies. I also got my graduate degree from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And I received a master's in education and human development, focusing on adult education, multicultural issues, as well as organization development. Then I decided to somehow go and get another master's from Field & Graduate University, focusing on human development and organization development. And then I got my PhD, got my doctorate from Emerson, focusing on the healing of trauma in organizations. So that is the work that I've been doing for years and years and years. I love it. So I end up doing things like executive coaching, leadership development. I do a lot of soft skills training around communication, around diversity, implicit bias, sexual harassment prevention, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm usually called into organizations to work with dysfunctional teams, dysfunctional executives, et cetera. So that's what I tend to do. So now that you have that background about me, let me give you a little bit of personal stuff other than just educational background and professional background. So I have 2 sons. I am divorced. Was married for 13 years, got a divorce. He's my husband now, and so, so with my husband though, I had 2 sons. One is now 28, the other one is 25. And they both, one lives in Maryland and the other one lives in Washington, D.C. So I actually like my children. So I actually like spending time with them. I have a great time with them. I don't just love them. So I like to say, I always tell them, I share that with people. They're like, really, you like us? I say, yes, that's why I spend time with you. I actually like you. I like you as people. I think you're developing quite well as individuals. So that's what you know about me now. Now turn to your neighbor again and let them know, did your impression of me change? Yeah, now that you know more about me, has your impression changed? Did your original assumptions that you had of me, since you did not know who I was, did they remain the same or did they shift? Just share that with your neighbor. And then my question becomes, are you willing to admit to yourself or to others that your impression did change or did not change? So anyone willing to share? Did your impression change? Yes, sir.
First I thought you were a classy lady with a beautiful smile. Now,
Wait a minute.
now I would add something to it. You're an intelligent, beautiful woman with a beautiful smile.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. When we meet people, we size people up in 7 seconds or less. We look them up and down, glance at them, and we create a story about that person. And we all do it. It's not just one person who does it, or we all do that. We size the person up, we create a story about who that person is, and when we learn more about the individual, we may or may not change the original assumptions that we had. That's just how we work. And when it comes, though, to where you have new members coming into your congregation, and many of you are working in other, you have work or full-time work, many are retired too, of course. But when you are interacting with people, even on the street, you make an assumption about the individual that you happen to be passing, looking at, or interacting with at any time in a store, in a restaurant. That is what we do. So the conversation that we're actually going to have this afternoon for the next, I believe, couple of hours that we possibly have together, from my understanding, is we're actually going to look at implicit bias. So let's look at the definition that they said in the video. Thank goodness I did put it on here so I can repeat it for you. Unconscious bias is a response that's hidden, it's automatic, and it's natural. The ability to distinguish what is safe from the dangerous, or the ability to categorize information is hardwired into the brain. So back in the day, the way our brains were set up, back in historic times, is that we had to know what was safe and what was unsafe. So the way the brain works is, oh, I see you, you look similar, you're safe. Anything else that looks like you is similar and safe. Oh, unsafe. Anything that looks like that, smells like that, tastes like that is unsafe. Therefore, we categorize, and it's hardwired into the brain to do that. As man has evolved, and when I'm using the term man, I'm including woman in that, but as humans, let me rephrase it away, as humans evolved, even though our brains evolved, our brains remain hardwired to still treat things the same way. What is safe, what is unsafe, and we apply it to people. Oh, that person looks safe. Anybody that looks like that person is safe. Anything is different is other, and other is unsafe. And we apply it that way today. Unless you break the mold and get into exposure to lots of others, the others will always appear to be unsafe. And that's how the implicit bias ends up working for us. So I just pretty much covered that. When we get to the other, we always apply the negatives to the other. That's when we get into such things, if you want to know how prejudices and stereotypes come into play, that's how they come into play. Once we go other and go other is unsafe, anything negative goes to the other. And even if there is one person who does something different that makes them stand out, we will say they're an exception to the rule. We will look for ways to ensure that that other always is unsafe in some form or fashion. It's just what we do. And when I say what we do, I'm including all of us, all human beings into this. And anyone who does different is because they are conscious, they are aware of what's happening, and they take action to actually work differently than that. Okay? Now, I found myself looking last night at the definition because I said, this is probably going to come up or someone's going to think it, but they're not going to ask me the question. But it came out of the universe for me to mention, is that the term preference. Because people will go, well, wait a minute. I prefer something or someone over another. How is that different from being biased? Because preference is about selecting one thing over another. It's like, okay, I prefer purple to red, or I prefer red to black, or I prefer, that's a preference of one something over another. I prefer to date that kind of man instead of that kind of man. That's still a preference. The bias part gets into the automatic, the unconscious part. Except we're talking primarily in our conversation about implicit biases, the unconscious biases. There are also explicit biases. But we know about those because people are upfront about them. They say them. I hate that person. I hate those people. And they are very clear, and they will say it. They will verbalize it. They will take action that shows such. That's explicit. It's the implicit bias that becomes the issue that gets in our way, particularly if we do want to have relationships with people. That's where they come into play, and they can interfere with our having effective relationships. Yes, sir.
With explicit bias, though, how do I put it? To them, isn't it in their mind a truth, rather than, like Archie Bunker did not see anything he said as a bias. He saw it as a truth based on his own malformed opinion.
That's why I was so explicit. That's why it was so explicit. He was very clear about, here's how I feel about that kind of person.
Right.
Here's how I feel about these
In
people.
their mind, they see it as hate of a group. I think they see it as a false truth, I guess. Somehow it's different, I guess. How I'm
And we could take Archie Bunker as opposed to the KKK or some of the groups today where they are, we hate a group.
Right.
It's not even, it's beyond bias. It's like straight up hate.
Right.
Whereas an Archie Bunker, he never said he hated
Agreed.
a group. It was more like he has explicit biases.
Never take a violent action.
Exactly, yeah, so that's the little the distinction there, is that his was more of a bias, the others was outright hate. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Some organizations are starting to force people to set aside their preferences. Like the medical group that I'm a member of, they have it quite clearly stated that you do not get to choose your provider. You go to who they next up on the list.
Yes.
And if you do say anything about it, you say goodbye to that medical group.
Yeah, so they take the choice out of your, you can still have your preference, but they take the choice out of it. Okay, yes, sir.
I'm just wondering, does implicit bias lead to explicit bias, or are they completely, or unfair question, a relevant question, but I'm just wondering, like, I have an explicit bias, you know, I'm the KKK, I have explicit bias against Jews.
And that's more like hate, but yeah.
Right, I hate them, but what, does that come from implicit bias, or is it, or are they completely?
We're going to go into, that's a great segue. We'll be looking at, yeah, thank you so much, but yeah. A great segue at the beginning, where we'll have that conversation about where are these coming from. So we're going to get it right into that. We're going to look at where do biases come from? How are they formed? What brings them about into play? So, first I'm going to ask you though, what does this say? And that's how your brain works. It's an automatic. That's an example of implicit bias. Your brains rely on, but this is how your brain works. Your brain just relies on past experiences, fills in the blanks between what we see and what is processed implicitly. Fill in the blanks. We understand by weaving together the information we have with the threads of information that our brains remember. So that's how it falls together. So that's how the implicit bias works. That's how the brain works. So I'm moving ahead into your response to your question. So I want to continue with the brain just a little bit so you understand that this is something we all do. So the brain filters information. We're exposed to about 11 million pieces of information at any given time. The brain actually takes that information, attaches it to experiences we have had, be they direct or indirect experiences, norms, values, beliefs, messages, and then it really only takes about 40 to 50 pieces of information that it actually absorbs. Even though we're exposed to 11 million pieces of information at any given time, the brain only takes about 40 to 50 pieces. It can't handle it all. And we make observations, we create observations, practices, actions, interactions, and decisions based out of all of that. We're exposed. We have had experiences, we have particular norms we probably live by, we have values, we have beliefs, there are messages that we've received. We take all of that, extrapolate the 40 to 50 pieces that we want to deal with, And then we decide, we say, oh, this is what I've observed. You do behaviors, you take actions, and then you interact with people accordingly, and you make decisions out of that. Rarely do we check, do I have all the information I need? What am I basing this decision on? Talking to other people and saying, are you seeing this the same way I am? One of the main things I do when I'm working with organizations is I have colleagues that I'll go to and say, okay, wait a minute, this is happening, did I miss something? Did I see everything? Because I know I have a particular filters that I am looking at information through. And every once in a while, I'm going to possibly miss something. I have a hand here, yes.
I was just going to ask you, you brought a piece of this here. As one ages and gets more experiences, if those experiences are widely diverse, and you, whether it's with people, you see people of many, many different cultures, different backgrounds, what have you. You may start off with bias, but get to know them, now you add that to your memory.
Mhm.
So as you start to see more and more different people, you tend to be more open, because now you're trying to figure out, got a bigger base to work from, as opposed to someone that just stays in a very, shall we say, secluded community or a limited community where they don't have a chance to get those experiences. Then their biases just never go away, because that's the only experiences they have. So I think as you get around to a lot of environments, a lot of culture, so forth, that's quite helpful in opening up your mind to be accepted.
Great example, sir, a great example. And unfortunately, here in the United States, you know that most people do not go beyond 50 miles outside of their home. That's in the United States. A lot of other people from lots of other countries travel way more than people in the United States. Probably because, we do have at least, 50-something different countries within the United States. I mean, when you think about it, we really do.
The US is almost as big as Western Europe, let's say.
Exactly. Exactly.
Throughout the US and never go to a foreign country.
Exactly. But the unfortunate part is that people still don't really leave without, travel 50 miles outside of their home. I was very fortunate that I've slept in every single state. I'm very, very lucky with that. Yes, sir.
Is bias the reason cognitive dissonance happens?
Cognitive dissonance happens when we are trying to find some kind of confirmation bias to support whatever it is we think, of course. It's like, okay, I see that. No, it's got to be happening because of this. And we see it happening all today. I think it's hilarious. I find myself laughing at the news because people have created their own narrative, and then they find stuff to attach to their narrative. And I'm going, oh my goodness, this is hilarious.
I mean, like Trump and fake news.
Yeah, but that's a great example. Regardless of your politics, it's a great example of how it can easily be done. People have done that with CRT. People have done that with the word woke. I mean, they've just taken things and said, oh, we're going to find something and attach to it because here's what I believe about it. We see it's just very clear in our society today how people do it, and so easily done. There's so much information out there. It's easy for someone to find something that supports whatever they feel or think. It's very easy in today's society. It was much harder, back in the day before the internet, but now everybody has so much information at their fingertips that they can just use. Yes, sir.
So with the statistic of we only look at or keep 40 to 50 items, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I have to pay attention to the time to make sure, I don't go over.
I find it interesting because when you look at like the YouTube theorems and the Facebook, they're feeding you things that are all in line with something you searched on. And if you're only keeping 40 or 50,
Yes.
you're definitely not getting those alternate views. You're
Yes.
just getting complete support for whatever your initial search was, your initial bias. And all you're getting is confirmation that you're right.
Yes, it's cognitive dissonance at the computer age. I mean, it is. And AI now will do it easily for you.
Right.
Yes, sir.
If I may, you've been very gracious with taking and answering questions, but if I may suggest, let's try and hold them. We're working on a time.
Yep, I don't mind them. Yeah, we're good.
You know,
Thank you. We're good. But, and all your questions wonderfully are on topic. So that's the great thing. You're on topic. If you're off topic, I'd be like, let's hold that till later, but you're on topic. Well, I think a lot of great learning comes when people ask the questions that's on their minds, because that helps you to learn, and with the topic and so forth. So you're not off topic. We're still on topic, and it's very important to recognize that, because that is an action you all can take. I did a play with my I have the Alexa, where I have the little device in my kitchen. And I did a play with it to see what information it would give me. I started looking at some video I heard about from some right wing, and I'm getting all this right wing stuff now. I'm going, that's not even, what am I getting? But it has now decided, oh, this is what you want to watch. And I'm going, no, I've got to reboot you. This is not what I want to watch. But when you watch one thing, it starts feeding it to you more and more. My oldest son, he and I have these great in-depth discussions once a week when he calls me to talk with Mom for about 2 hours. And he always says, Mom, people do not research. They don't look at alternative points of view. So they end up with the cognitive dissonance. It's a loop. It becomes a loop. I wanted to show you this video to show how the brain works, but I don't believe I'm going to be able to show it to you because of how the system up here is working.
May I
So.
suggest that if this is on a website, why can't we pull our phones up and watch the video that way?
Well, that's an interesting suggestion. It is on a website. Well, it is on YouTube. It's called Test Your Awareness. That's great. I love when people think outside the box. Great. New Orleans thinking. Think outside the box.
And I had a bias against New Orleans.
So the video is called Test Your Awareness, Whodunit.
One word,
Yep, just like it's spelled right here on the screen where you can see here, it says Whodunit.
and test your awareness.
No, Test Your Awareness, it doesn't have to be one word, no.
So I'm just gonna ask, how we're gonna do this if we don't want everyone playing it with the
Well,
volume?
turn your volume
right?
off, well, your volume
Turn
should
the
be off
volume off
anyway.
and you play the volume?
Yeah, I can play the volume. Thank you. Great suggestion again. You all can watch while I play the volume.
Okay.
But you're gonna have to, the interesting thing here is you're going to have to, it's gonna, at one point, it's gonna say pause, and so pause your video when it says pause.
I cheat.
Okay, you cheat? I got you. You ready? Did everyone find it?
Test your awareness, whodunit.
I'm gonna stop. Did everyone find it? Is everyone together? Test your awareness, whodunit, or just put in whodunit, it'll probably come up for you. Oh, it is playing? Oh! Oh, it is!
This afternoon was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's goat below stairs, sir.
I was planting my petunias in the potting shed. Constable, arrest Lady Smythe. But how did you know? Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Wow, that one played. Fabulous. Thank you for noticing it was
They were
playing.
working behind you before.
It was?
There were people working behind you.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So what did you notice? Did anybody notice anything? Yes.
Everybody was holding a blunt object.
Okay. So anybody could have been the whodunit? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Large clock on the floor next to the man's head. Looked as if he might have been hit with a clock.
So did you notice the 21 changes? There were 21. Did anyone notice 21 changes? Can you say you noticed 21 changes happening?
Yep.
Okay, so that's how the brain works. Let's watch these 21 changes that happen.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
But I was planting my petunias in the potting shed. Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
How observant are you in real life? Now, so can anyone say what happened though? What led you to not notice these 21 changes?
We were focusing on the people that were the potential suspects.
Yes. Anyone else? But that's right on. That's exactly what happened. You were set up to look for whodunit. And therefore, your brain focused only on that. And you may be asking, well, wait a minute, why are you spending time on this and letting us know how this brain works? Because that's what our brain does when it comes to biases. We're set up already to believe a certain way, and therefore, our brain is going to take us there. This is cognitive dissonance in action. So let's look at and address to your question, where do biases come from then? If my brain already works like this, it's hardwired to do this, then where are these biases coming from that my brain is automatically going to? Because when you're born as a baby, the little babies, are they born with biases? No, they're beautiful. They're gorgeous. That's why everyone loves babies. You know, they walk around going, coochie, coochie, coo. Oh, wow, so innocent. So all of these things, everywhere, we can get biases from everywhere, every experience, every interaction. I don't know if many of you all have heard one of the things that a lot of African American men say they experience, like if they get on the elevator with someone and they're the only one, that if it's a woman, she may, hold her purse, put her hand on her purse. Where does she get that from? Particularly if she's never been robbed by an African American, where would she get that from? She gets it from if she heard it from someone else or she saw it on television. And TV is a big one from where a lot of people get their biases. Because if people are not traveling 50 miles outside of their home and they have not had a direct experience with someone who is other than them, then where are they learning about the person or the people or the group? It's going to be from television or what they read or what they see or what they hear possibly from someone else. They haven't had direct experience. But the brain doesn't care if it's direct or not. The brain just takes it in and decides to use it as a bias. And unless the person is consciously working on themselves to become aware of how they're thinking and why they think the way they do, or why they feel the way they do, then they just live life and go on about their merry way with the biases, and they can pop up at any given time. Did that address your question? About where do they come from? The question about where do they come from? Everywhere. It's like being out in the rain. Matter of fact, traveling here yesterday morning, I came out, I was like, oh, it's raining. I had an umbrella, and I was going up the steps to the airport, and the rain was sort of sliding in, even under the umbrella. It's like a drizzly, fuzzy kind of rain, And I was like, oh my, under the umbrella, and even if you try to cover your head, you still get it. And that's what happens with biases. You can try and try and try, but there's no way you can avoid them because they're just here. They're just like rain, it's just here. The key is, how can you become aware that they may exist? So, you now know how the brain works, you know where biases come from. So let's take a look at, it's a huge impediment to inclusion. When you're thinking about having a congregation in which it's inclusive for all, or when you're thinking about working with people where you're having an inclusive organization, it's like bias is an impediment to that. Just because they come up in all kinds of ways, that becomes the big issue. So we're going to walk you through various scenarios to give you an opportunity to see where you are regarding biases. I think we're right on time here. Yes. Do we have any questions? 'Cause I do have a few minutes. Do we have any questions on what I've covered thus far about biases? About where they come from, how they're formed? Yes, sir.
Can I go back and make a quick comment on your observation?
Sure.
So, and I'll do this briefly. As a social worker, I would always videotape. And I had a group, a family that was very repressed and their faces were down like this. And I was going nowhere. I had one of my students look at the videotape and he said, John, the reason that you're not getting anywhere with the family is because as you're interviewing, your face is in your lap as well. The next session I lifted up and the family lifted up at the same time as I did, and we were able to move successfully. So observations is really, for me, is really critical.
Most definitely, most definitely, most definitely. And, you know, oftentimes you don't, and as these, I'm going to have you do scenarios together because I think it's a great way for you to see how biases can show up in your congregation without your actually recognizing that they're showing up. It's so interesting. I think I was sitting next to this woman on the airplane, and she said to me near the end of the flight, we were about to get off of the plane, she said, so are you a student? And I actually was taken aback for a second, and I had to ask myself, why am I taken aback by her asking me that question? You know, I actually was looking at myself going, I was thinking about what am I wearing? Is there anything that says I'm a student? Because I have gray hair, that could mean, that's a bias if I think somebody with gray hair is not a student. I'm like, okay, so I said, I have to ask her. Let me not sit here and stew and assume. Let me ask her a question. So I turned to her, I said, what is it that has you think that I'm a student? And she said, oh, it's the book that you're reading. Now, I don't know if she thought of that, because I know what I had in my hand, and it's not a book that had anything to do with being a student. So I said, that was a good recovery on her part. This is what's going through my head. I was like, that's a really good recovery on her part to say that, because let me tell you what manual was in my hand. Husqvarna Viking Sewing.
Oh, jeez.
That's the manual that was in my hand. I was reading about my new sewing machine. So that was the title of it. In big red letters, Husqvarna Viking. I'm going, sewing. Like, that doesn't relate. So here's why I think she thought I was a student.
Because it's a Viking.
Oh, that's not why I thought. I'm gonna take, these scenarios will take you there, why I thought she thought I was a student. Because there were only like two other African-American people on the airplane from where I was coming, and they were students. And I said to myself, so we're flying into Rhode Island. I think there are black people there from last experience. You know, does she think I'm a student because the other two people on here had backpacks and stuff and clearly appeared to be students? Is she assuming that I am too because I look like them? That was what went through my head. And when she said, because of the book you're reading, I'm going, this is a manual. I'm thinking, how could she get that this was a student book? Because I have been a student, of course, as you all have, and you know what a student book looks like, and this was clearly a sewing manual. Yes, sir.
Do you think she might have been elevating your position?
To being a student?
I think she's a teacher.
Elevating you so that she wouldn't have to embarrass herself by asking a really stupid question.
That's a possibility. Always a possibility. Yes, sir.
I think that says more about her than it does about you, that she would jump to that conclusion on something.
And I'm giving this as an example just how implicit bias works. So here's the deal. It works on both sides. That's what I want you to notice, because I'm sitting there going, okay, Do I have a bias here about her? And that's why I decided to ask a question. Because I'm like, I'm not gonna walk away thinking she's a certain type of person. I'm going to ask her a question instead of making assumptions about why did she make the statement. Let me ask her. Because I actually sat there for a couple of minutes going, no, I need to ask her a question. I'm not gonna walk away from this interaction assuming what she meant by that. Because I don't know what she meant by that. Yes, sir. I have several hands up here.
Being a devil's advocate, couldn't she have seen the book and thought possibly you were a fine arts student?
I haven't the slightest idea because I'm not in her head, which is why I asked the question. And because she didn't give me any further explanation to say, oh, I thought you might be in fine art. You know, I don't know. And I'm not a fine arts person, so I wouldn't even go there. Yes, sir.
You talk about implicit bias. I'm on a committee right now to hire a new Hillel executive director.
Okay.
And we're interviewing a young woman. We've kind of decided on this woman. And we're trying so hard to make sure we do all the right things and not ask the
I got some scenarios here.
questions and so forth. But all of a sudden we're talking about, well, what's her husband going to do? Is he going to be able to find a job? And stuff like that. We didn't ask her. This is internal. And
Still.
So we pointed out, we can't ask those questions. We wouldn't be asking that if we were interviewing him. We wouldn't be asking what she was going to do.
Great example. It's excellent for you to notice that now. And also, what even carried your brains there to bring up that conversation? So we're going to do some activities here, some exercises, some scenarios to give you an opportunity to look at the very thing you're talking about. I saw another hand. Yes, sir.
So as we build our biases, are there pathways to our brain that lead us more to them as far as visual, auditory, even olfactory? Are those things more easily picking up a bias from one or any of those that we've noticed in our background?
No, it could be from any of those and all of those. Because we're all different, some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, so it really depends on you and as an individual. So one thing that I've been doing as a practice for myself is I actually don't watch the news quite often. I don't watch it. I know that I take days where I'm not watching any news. Because I know if something really important happens, somebody's gonna call me and tell me. And I don't watch it though, because I know I'm taking it in. So we are just energy, and you're just taking it in. You're absorbing it. There's no way you cannot if you have it on. I have a practice, and you're gonna think this is really funny. I have a practice of watching the Hallmark Channel every once in a while. To get some love, you know, I'll watch what was I watching? What did I have on this morning? Golden Girls. I mean, I will watch something that's totally calm and doesn't necessarily get into the, you know, all of the, oh, you should be this way, you should be that way, just to relax my brain. Because we absorb on all levels. You know, we would like to say it's just auditory, it's just visual, it's just physical, but we are energetic beings. We're energetic spiritual beings. We are absorbing on all levels at all times. So when you're interacting with someone, if they're very negative, you are with them, you're absorbing that. Like I have had friends call and I'm like, okay, what are we talking about? And they're like, well, I need to know, oh, you know, let me call you back. I can't talk to you when all you're handing out is negativity. And when I say negativity, I mean that you're at a frequency level where it's very low, and so I have to make sure I'm in the right place to hear it. It doesn't mean I don't listen to people when they have issues. I do that all the time at work. But I have to make sure I'm in a certain energy level when I'm doing it, because it's easy to absorb. I see a hand way back there.
Don't all people have reptilian brains, the functions that are core to humanity?
And that's what I talked about in the beginning, yes.
Yeah, you just can't get past it.
You can get past it, but we automatically do it. So the getting past it is not stopping your brain from doing it. The getting past it is you're becoming aware. First, you're aware, oh, my brain does this. That's the first step of awareness. My brain does this. Okay, so now I know when I'm in situations with people, places, or things that I consider uncomfortable, not the usual. Let me see where my brain is. What is it doing? You know, am I categorizing people? Do I have a particular something that's showing up here? That's when you're checking in with yourself. So let's do what we're going to do. I think the easiest way to do this is to have people sitting at 5 tables in the back, because they'll cover part B as well. If you have a part
Based on
B,
what
you
the
go
rabbi
to
was
that area.
thinking, but that isn't necessarily what Abel was trying to convey.
Well, we had a lively conversation and came to a conclusion that Abel was inappropriate, and the very first thing he did is go to this man's sexuality and passed over his qualifications. And to the extent that the rabbi did what I think any one of us would have done, get him a snarky little answer. Well, I've been in congregations where the secretary and the president were straight, so I guess we're okay. Well, that's all humorous, but at the end of the day, the bias there, if it's throughout the congregation, this just isn't going to be a good fit. Not if Abel represents the feelings of this rural congregation. I think the rabbi would be better off taking his husband and his kids and moving on to a more open congregation, willing to not discuss things that just don't need to be discussed. It's irrelevant to his qualifications. Thank you.
Excellent point. So great, main issues there would be implicit bias around sexual orientation and even his age possibly, regarding your family man, you have the children. And that was not a part of the qualifications, then why is he bringing it up and having a conversation about it? So can you ever talk about sexual orientation with someone? If they bring it up, and they wanted to be a part of a conversation that you're having, but if it's not something that they're bringing up, if you don't have a conversation with heterosexuals regarding their sexual orientation, then why are you going to have a conversation with someone who's a non-heterosexual about their sexual orientation? That becomes the question. Why would you have the conversation? Okay, who had number 3? To examine your personal biases. There's a place that you can do it in private. You can go to implicit.harvard.edu, implicit take test, HTML. Harvard has been doing studies for years on implicit biases. They have all kinds of tests out there that you can take privately. It's actually fabulous. I use this with my students all the time to say, go out there and take as many tests as you can. Because as the Harvard research has shown, even the people who are working on this, they're like, we can't get rid of the biases. They're always there. They're just there. So feel free to go out there and take that test. And then I leave you with the action plan part 2, a question. This is rhetorical, do not answer. Just think about this. Are you able to separate the feeling you have for someone or a group from your recognition of them as a spiritual being? Because we're all simply spiritual beings having a human experience. Thank you all so much for your time.